pleased to have as a guest this evening Carrie Shubert. If I don't have a hiccup, sorry.
You got it. Hi.
Hiccup and not.
Wow.
And Carrie is a clairvoyant medium and very interesting person, author, and does a lot of interesting things. Carrie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a good day here. Any day here in California is awesome.
I can imagine.
Are you close to the beach?
I'm only 25 minutes away, but this morning I had a client call for about an hour, and then I got in a 4.5 mile run, and have just been kind of killing time waiting for your show.
Awesome. It sounds like that does sound like a great show. Why don't you tell what? I'm getting a look, but I don't know why. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay, well, background we don't have all year, so as far as you mean my profession, I've been doing this forever. Professionally, since 1979, though, was when I started doing psychic fairs, and it was after doing S and then a thing called the Silva method, Silva mind control, in 79. And it actually made my control of my psychic ability just like blossom like crazy. And one of the things I did to make my ability grow was that I lived in an apartment in Los Angeles at that time, and I was like in the courtyard area. I would open up my apartment door, and I'd ask people to come in that I didn't know, and I'd say, give me a name of someone and take notes, and then I'd like you to contact them, see if everything I got is correct, and then call me. And that's how I practiced. And then when I felt ready, I started doing psychic fairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that was kind of my question for you, is how you got into this, but that was kind of a woo right into it. So that's kind of interesting, the Silva method, huh? How did that make your how did it make it blossom, I guess, was my question.
Well, here's the thing. I let me just back up a second. Okay, I'm going to compare what I do with tennis. So everybody can learn how to play tennis. So it's a technique, but the more passionate you are about it, the more you really want to get on the court and learn. And so the people that become pros, they feel like something's missing if they're not out playing tennis every day. Well, it was the same with my psychic ability. Early on, I was getting things, and I didn't know what to do with them. And it was kind of like how other people get it, where they get a flash of something and they don't know what it means or how to retrieve more of a complete picture. I was one of those, so it drove me crazy. So I was on this quest. I was constantly trying to look for things and ways to get more of it or to understand what I was getting. And I felt like I was different than everybody. So what actually developed it more and more was going to a lot of these self-help groups, meditating, reading things. The more the chatter in my head quieted down, the more I was getting more information. And what happened in Silva isn't necessarily what happens with other people, but I think what Silva showed me was that somehow we're all connected and there is no separateness. And there's a segment on the last weekend where they had you go to your level of self-hypnosis, because the whole thing is about alpha-theta levels. So when you go to your alpha-theta level, what we did was sat across from a partner, and they read off, they gave us the name, we got to our level, they give us the name of somebody, and what happened was all of a sudden it was like my third eye opened, and I could see an x-ray of a skeleton, and it would go beep, 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 and it would stop, let's say, on their knee where they had knee surgery. And the person, I'd say knee surgery, and they'd go hit, if I got it. So that's how it went during that period of Silva. But in my head, I went, okay, I don't want to see a skeleton. Show me how the person looks. And then I got this lava lump of freckles. So then I said, do they have freckles? So it was coming in the weirdest way, and then the more I worked with it, the more it actually developed where I see pictures, I feel the people that I'm tuning into. I'm an empath also, which means for me, the way I read, it's like I go to an alpha theta level, my level of self-hypnosis, and then I put the person's head on, basically, like a virtual reality trip, and I'm looking through their eyes, and certain things will stand out, certain things won't. Since I'm part of their script, I'm only going to see what they're allowed to know. So if you ask me a question, I am very long-winded.
No, that's fine. Talk away. I'm interested. I have a very similar situation with myself and the paranormal in how I've developed my own quote-unquote clairvoyant intuitiveness. And I focus a lot. You pretty much get what they want you to get. But, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, one of the things I want to say, too, because they really didn't have psychic school when I was growing up, I developed in '79 a course called Develop and Control Your Psychic Ability, and I've been teaching it for years, and for the last 18 years I've taught it in Arizona at the community colleges every trimester.
Wow. I actually saw that on your website. I would like to talk to you offline about that.
Okay.
I've been wanting to do some other things to try to. I mean, I do a lot of meditation and stuff like that, and get into that theta state. But I'm interested in what other people do and other classes on how they do it, and see if I can incorporate that in my own deal.
I love sharing it because I really love to see the light come on for people when they go, wow, I'm actually tuning it in. One of the things I do want to say, because there are probably people listening that are curious about psychic development, is that it usually feels like you're making it up. It shows up like it's in your own head. And I think because of TV and media, people expect to see an apparition in their house or some like profound thing. And yes, sometimes I do get things like that where I feel somebody touch me or tap on my shoulder or whatever, but that really isn't the norm where this apparition appears in front of you all the time. Not every reading is profound, but it is, we are getting on somebody's frequency. And so, you know, people have this daily too, where they, and I know I'm going a little, I'm diversing a little bit. Sometimes when you're around people or you go into a room and there's a certain energy, you will pick up on the vibe and your mood changes. And most people don't realize that is empathing. You know, it's like in the 60s when they say they have good vibes. The truth is we're all made up of atoms and molecules that vibrate at a frequency. And so what you do when you're picking up on stuff, you actually are on somebody's frequency. We're all like a radio receiver, and we have our own channel, and that's what I call channeling, when I'm zeroing in and focusing my awareness on somebody's channel or frequency.
Do you find it different when you are on frequency with someone living versus spirit on the other side?
Sometimes, yeah. There have been times, though, I'll never forget, there was one reading, and I picked up on this woman's husband. I described this guy, and she said, yeah, that's my husband. And she didn't tell me that he was deceased. And I went on and on and on about their relationship and how they interact. And I didn't know he was not around because a lot of the time, I mean, the only difference is you don't have your body. You know, it's like a costume in a soap opera. So I can't always tell. I will ask people, you know, sometimes I'll feel like somebody might be dead because they may feel more distant in some ways. And I'll go, is this the person who's passed away? Or if I'm feeling like a lot of physical stuff, then I'll know, okay, wait a minute, something's not right here. This guy's either got severe health issues or they're no longer here. And I'll try to be gentle about it. Like, you know, I'm getting all these health issues. Is this person still around? Are there questions about their health? So, you know, I try to be responsible about how I read, too.
I agree with you. I know for me, with it is different between the living and the departed. And I often get the physical sensations of the departed, usually connected with how they die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends. I don't always. I think it depends on how attached they are to their death or the person that you're tuning in for, how much they need to know about it. When I first, before I really had control of my ability, when I went to places where somebody had died, I would feel it. I would feel the so-called negative that was stronger, and then I learned that all the other things that I felt that were coincidences were actually also psychic ability. So I learned how to, like, kind of get an on-off button on that stuff, too.
Did you see something?
Yeah, I did see something walk through there. So.
Just wave.
Okay.
We actually broadcast from a location that we do public events at and investigations, and there's a couple of resident spirits here. Someone just.
Oh, where are you guys? Where are you?
We're in Joplin, Missouri, and right now we're in the John Weiss Mansion, and there's about 4 that are here regularly, and often while we're doing the show, someone will make an appearance.
Oh yeah, we'll see energy balls or shadow people or whatever, little wisps running around.
Oh, that's so interesting. I had some clients that came to me from Joplin, and then shortly after the tornado hit, and I was trying to figure out who they were in my book because I read so many people because I wanted to check on see if they were all right or if I had described any changes in their life, but I never could figure out who it was. But wow, that town was devastated a few years ago. So
it was over 9,000 structures destroyed.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, we actually did a special with the Weather Channel that aired a couple months ago about paranormal activity coming out of the tornado. So,
oh, that wouldn't surprise me. By the way, did you see the link I sent you on the investigation I did with Michael Lynch?
No, I haven't seen it. When did you send it?
I emailed it to you. I think it was this morning.
Okay.
So what happened?
She checks her email like once a month. I'll listen to her.
What?
She checks her email like once a month.
Okay, that's good to know.
If I email her something, I have to send her a text and say, hey, did you get my email?
Well, it occurred to me that you guys might have come to me through Michael Lynch because I met him because he had me on his radio station when he was doing Paranormal Tuesdays on the Dave Glover Show 97.1 in St. Louis. And then they flew me out to do a special for Halloween at the Lemp Mansion. But Michael was in Arizona when I was in Arizona, and he was there about a year ago, and he took his EVP equipment and we went into a haunted hotel called the San Carlos Hotel, and he did footage of one of our friends had a cameraman film Michael Lynch filming me as I pointed out where I thought there were ghosts, and so I would see them in human form and he would film them. We spent about 15, 20 minutes running through the hotel. The valet parking guy snuck us down to the basement where there's supposedly more ghosts because there used to be a well down there where a bunch of Indian children had died before a hotel was built on top of it. And I was talking to them. Anyway, when I finally saw the playback, I was really astonished because I was expecting to see translucent humans, and instead we saw tons of orbs. And so everywhere where I point something out, there was an orb. So we probably got about 8 or 9 of them. And it was really cool. So, of course, in his kind of dramatic way, he took it and made like a fire and brimstone intro, like a Rod Serling intro. Although the rest of it after that intro is totally legitimate, not touched or modified of me going around. The reason you can't really hear me, people were like, well, how come we can't hear you? Well, I wasn't mic'd because it was just to kind of see what was going on. So I really thought I would love to spend more time with his equipment because I don't know if I was able to bring them in more because I'm a medium or if they were just around. You see what I'm saying? So I really wanted to do an experiment where he would come into my office and give me the name of someone who was dead, and then film to see if you get the same thing on EVP equipment, if ghosts are different than beings that have passed on.
Well, I think our experience is that spirit tends to see sensitives or mediums as a beacon of light or something.
Yeah, they see like this. Oh, the music goes off and they can see us like a big beacon in the middle of the night, and
yeah, it's like, oh, you're aware of me, and so it's like they gravitate. That's really my experience, and often depending on what's going on, it'll draw more spirits into a location.
And I was, to kind of bring that into a different perspective, I did a drumming out at my mom's house yesterday, and my mom and dad's property. And Mom was telling me that she could connect easier today than she did the day before. So it was like it brought the energies into it. So I think that there's people like us, and you've been doing it a lot longer than I have, that we have a tendency to pull in that energy and create almost an easier way for them to do it, an easier way for them to connect to us. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think if you're supposed to do a profession along those lines, where you're supposed to be is where you're led and where you get more info. I have to say though, I'm thinking about like the newness. When it was new, there was such an awareness. Like anything that's brand new, you're like, wow. And then it gets to a point, unfortunately, that you get a little desensitized because I'm so used to it. It's like, okay, great, I talk to dead people, yeah. So you know what I mean? I know it sounds weird, but it's like anything you do, you get to a point that it's like so. And I predict the future. I'm not always aware that they're around me all the time. Sometimes I'll get a flash of something and like, oh, okay, hi. Like, especially after a reading, sometimes that person will still dialogue with me from the other side, like when I was driving home from my office. Mm-hmm. But usually what I do is when I'm done, I do anything I can that's so the opposite of my work because I work so much. I'm not. If I were just a medium, it might be easier. But I'm actually, because I predict the future, there are a lot of people that come to me because they're really going through some major life crises and changes, and they're at a crossroads. In the olden days, I'd get like maybe one or two like really heavy readings. People would come in mostly like, hey, give me what's coming up for the next year. Nowadays, everyone's got relationship stuff going on, career stuff, where they're going to live. People are much more change-oriented than they used to be. So almost every single one is like, them sticking an IV in my arm and trying to suck blood. And so, I mean, they're more intense. I don't mean it in a bad way, but that the world we live in now is much more intense, and people really want to know that they're going to be okay and where they're headed and more detail. And so you really are. I have to do things to make sure that I'm keeping my own crap out of the way, being objective, and being able to not only, I'm like a psychologist in a way, or a psychic therapist, because I'm trying to also give them tools to get through those segments so they can find peace while they're going through the shitstorm. So I'll tell you, one of the I have to share this reading because this was so amazing, and she said it was okay as long as I don't name names, and she's obviously I don't think on this program or listening. But I have a client that I read once a year. I do a lot of readings by phone. There are many, many people I've never met that I've read for years. And I was reading this person, and I picked up on this. I described this guy, and it turned out it was somebody she just started dating. And I said to her, I said, why am I getting so much outdoors with him? Is this guy outdoors for a living? Like, is he a park ranger? Why am I getting all the outdoors? She said, well, right now she said he does a lot of outdoor stuff, but right now he's climbing Mount Everest. And so as I was reading her, all of a sudden, and I had my eyes closed, it felt like my whole apartment imploded. And I had to open my eyes. It was like being on an acid trip. I went, geez, that was really profound, because I don't always get stuff that way. I'll get it like a sense of, but this one was, I had to look and go, whoa. And I went, I don't think it's an earthquake. I think I just experienced an avalanche. I said, this guy's going to go through an avalanche. So I said, say your name, say his name. And I said, he's going to be okay. Don't get this as long-term dating. You know, you'll probably date him for the next few months. Obviously, he's okay, or you wouldn't be seeing him next month. Anyway, that night, the avalanche hit Mount Everest, and he was at that camp. And so I saved her text, because she was like, oh, my God, you know, I was going to email him and tell him to be careful, but since we just started dating, I really didn't want to tell him that. So once in a while, I'll get something that's like a, whoa, that was cool, you know. It's neat when you get stuff in that way, but it's not always, you know, that way. Sometimes it's just like a dull feeling, and then you go, oh, okay, I think there's going to be an avalanche. This one was like where I felt like I was experiencing it on a physical level. It's pretty neat.
That's
wow.
Cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I had a question, but I forgot what it was. So go ahead.
Well, you were talking about predicting the future. Talk about that a bit.
What?
You were talking about one thing that you do is predict the future. Can you explain that a little more?
Okay. I have a method that I use that I also teach people. I've spent a lot of time doing this, so I would be bored as hell if I didn't try new techniques. I'm one of those that is willing to take the risk and trying new stuff, just because it's the only way you grow, just like in any profession, if you don't explore. So one of the things I've learned to do in order to get more consistent with timelines is I'll have somebody say a name, you know, say their name, and I'll go, okay, like for instance, we're in July. I'll go July 2014, and then I'll go July, August, September, October, until I start seeing more of a movie. And it'll usually stop on something, or I'll notice something that stands out, and then I can describe it. And then I'll go, okay, let me now take it from that point, and then I'll go month to month to month. That way I'm seeing an event, like let's say it's a single person, and all of a sudden I get to August, and I see some blonde guy. I'm like, oh, here's a guy who's coming in who looks like blah, 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 blah. And then I'll go past it. I'll go, okay, let's see if it develops. Well, if the person's not in the picture 2 months later, then I know they were dating and nothing occurred. You know, if I'm going a little further and I see this person and then I'm feeling all this love and it's continuing, then I can see that relationship continues. So I will often, you know, look at different categories that way, so I can compartmentalize them. Then I go into the area of work. When I first do the reading, I'll say to somebody, let me just see what comes up. And often I compare it with like taking a puzzle of that person and dumping it out, and you see pieces, random pieces, and as I describe them and they verify, yeah, I know what that is, then I can start to put some of the pieces will come together and make a story, and other pieces are random and you don't know what they are, you know?
Right.
But when you're predicting the future too, an example of, why you don't always see, you can see outcomes of things, but why you don't always see how the person gets there. You can see segments. One, it would be boring as hell if you knew everything that was going to come up. What would be the point of playing in this dimension? But two, so you can't possibly know what's going to happen every day in everyone's life. Those of us that are seers, and astrologers, and palm readers, and all the different other methods, tarot, it's all about trying to figure out what script you came in with. And an example of not being able to see totally, but being able to tell someone something so that they could know that everything is pre-scripted. I had a client the things that I remember are the ones where they came back to me and verified and told me. So this one stood out too. Quit yawning over there, guys.
Sorry.
No, I'm very
I
interested.
don't.
Oh.
Okay. I had a client that I read that I did a reading on her, and her and her husband were going through a divorce. They were living in the same house, and at the end of the reading, I said, "Okay, is there anything you want to ask me?" And she said, "Would you tune into my husband's job?" And so I started with that month, and I'm going to say I think it was like in January, and I went January, February, March, April, May. When I got to May, I didn't see employment. All of a sudden, the screen went blank. So I said, "Oh, I guess he's leaving his job in May." And she said, "Why would he? He's been there for a long time." And I said, "Well, let me look at the company, say the company name." So I looked at the company. I didn't get any issues with the company. I looked at him I described his boss, looked at how his boss and him interacted. And I tried all these different ways to figure out why he wasn't there, and I couldn't get it. He was not getting laid off. His boss wasn't firing him. The company wasn't going under. I said, "I don't know. I just know he's leaving in May." She came back to me at the end of that year and said, "This is making me want to cry." She said the reason he wasn't in his job in May was he died of a brain aneurysm in his sleep in May. So what that showed me was that after the fact, she was allowed to know that, something was going to occur in May, but that she wasn't allowed to know beforehand because, one, she would have either obsessed over it, two, she would have tried to prevent it, but it wasn't supposed to be. You see what I'm saying? So I only got what she was allowed to know that would show her. I feel like everything we get in life is a reminder that there's more than what we see, that there's more than this reality. And each one of us gets it in a different way. It's a reminder from our higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it, to remind you, hey, don't sweat the small stuff. There's more to life than here. I think we're here, and all the events that occur to us outside of us are about the art and mastery of letting go and going with the flow. Everything we have that happens in our life, and it's like whether it's health, whether it's relationships, whether it's an earthquake, it's all about feeling the feelings and then creating value and letting go. Because you can't.
Amen, sister.
Yeah, because you can't control anything that happens outside of you anyway. You can only do the footwork, and you got to stay out of the results.
That's right. Even then, sometimes you don't have a whole lot of control with what's happening with yourself at times either.
No, that's true. Yeah, I can try to control my mouth, but not always.
Well, that kind of goes into a question that's in the chat room right now. It says, "What is your opinion on the free will and its effects on readings and communications?" And you kind of answered that, but...
Okay. You know what, and I get into this with people. I once did a thing with a talk with a bunch of seniors, and when I said I don't believe in free will, they freaked out because of the Holocaust. So here's what I believe, and this is why I call this dimension a soap opera. On one level, and this is going to sound like a paradox, on one level, everything that is, there's no negative and positive. It is all just is. And on another level, obviously we feel deeply. Just like I can tune into people that die and know that they're fine on the other side, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to grieve and cry because they're fine, but I'm not when I suffer a loss. But I believe that everything is pre-scripted, everything. And for many years, I didn't believe that. I was a big supporter of writing goals, setting them, and going for them, and that I was the cause and could make them happen if I could just write them correctly, visualize, and I would manifest. I think all of that's great, but again, you have to let go of the results because it's not always you can't always cause everything. So what happened was for 7 years, everything I wrote down and I visualized did happen in my life. And then after that, the opposite happened. My life went to shit, it seemed like, the outside. But what happened was I ended up in like a personal, I call it seminar, because I went through a shitstorm, the Northridge quake, a divorce, raising 3 children, 2, 3, and 6 on my own, and it was not what I signed up for. But what happened was it forced me to grow as a person because the universe had a greater plan for me, and that was that I had to get out of my own way and out of my own fears and my own comfort zone to grow as a person. And I had a very small world because I was very fear-oriented and results-oriented. Like, if I go for this goal, are people going to think I look stupid? What if I fall on my face? What if I'm not smart enough? And so I had to start. I was forced, because everything material left, that I had to step out of my comfort zone and grow as a person. Mm-hmm. And then one of the other events that happened to me is my brother dying, and in 1992. And as he was dying, people came by to tell him how much they loved him and they would miss him and what a difference he made in their life. And I thought of all the would-have, could-have, should-have. All the time I thought, boy, I'd like to do this, but I'll wait till my kids get older. Or I'd like to do that, but I had all these justifications that were really cover-up for insecurity. And I had to make myself get out there. I thought about it and went, I do not want to be at the end of my life with any would-have, could-have, should-have. So I took comedy classes, writing classes. Comedy is the best. Comedy improv is the best way to get out of this worry about looking like an asshole, you know, and to just be who you are, you know, and you know, yeah. And then what years ago?
I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. No, it was on in front of the screen. I had to fix it.
And then somebody said to me, hey, you know, you're a runner. Why don't you run the marathon? I went, oh, okay. So I ran the marathon. You know, I just started really challenging myself. I remember the first time I went on radio, I went into the bathroom, I prayed, God, let me get out of ego. Just let me be of service and not worry about looking good, getting it right, whatever. And it worked out. You know, like my comedy coach used to say, don't try to be funny. You know, we're all here to just be of service. And to me, what I learned from all those experiences was, failure is playing it safe. Failure is doing the same old, and not growing as a person. And success is about taking challenges, trying new things, not worrying about if you make money or if you look good or whatever your interpretation of success is. It's about living your life and the quality of your life. And to go back to free will. So I believe the choices that we make we think that they're free will, but they're in the script. I always seem to have somebody who's an astrologer in my life. Different ones come in different segments. And usually astrologers, they love to look at everything, especially even in their own life. Every day they look at planets, but if you're a friend of theirs, they'll look at your life. And it's amazing on a daily, astrology is hard to predict long term because there's so many factors, but on a daily basis, it really supports that we are kind of in a way like puppets, that whatever's going to happen to us is scripted. I mean, I've had them tell me what my kids were going to do on a given day. I was dating a guy once that this person said to me, okay, moon in Aries at 1:10, he's going to show up out of the blue where you are. And I thought, she's wrong, and all of a sudden his car went into the parking lot, and he's like, hey, I just came from the bike shop. And I had to laugh because it was like, wow, the planets do move in a certain direction, and shit happens, you know?
Well, I agree with you. I think the way I always kind of look at it is that there are certain big things that are sort of scripted, and we may change the path to get there a little bit, but those things seem to be set out there. And as they develop, you know, physics and so forth, and quantum physics, you know, they're coming up with theories that really kind of explain that, you know, on a atomic level, every moment of time, past, present, future, has already happened and exists at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely it has. That's why there's deja vu, because you already know, you've been downloaded with how everything's going to go. And so of the supporting characters, that's why I compare it with a soap opera. But how do you know you change your course? You don't. You think you're changing your course. But, life could either be like the movie Pleasantville, or there's adventure that kicks in to make it a little more exciting so that you grow as a person. Otherwise, this soap opera would be boring. But, even how somebody's going to die, I'm going to say, like, I had a friend who was an astrologer, a different one than in this segment of my life, who I had her look at my daughter's chart because she was having some difficulty with the car. And she started looking at all three of my kids, and she said to me, did one of your kids have a friend that was killed? And I said, not that I know of. And I shouted in the other room to my daughter and said, did you have a friend that was killed? And she said, no. The next day I was coming back from my morning run, and I'd go before the kids got up, so I would have it done before I drove them to school. And my middle daughter was sobbing. And I said, what happened? And she said, my friend Lindsay Chainhall was killed. And it happened that night, or after midnight. What happened was, and it's on the news, Lynsey was the spelling of her name. She was 20 years old, got off the freeway, and somebody in a car in an SUV pulled up and threw a can or a bottle at the car, and her friend in the backseat flipped them off. So they followed them. This was 2 in the morning. Lindsay tried to get away from them, and she ended up getting trapped in a cul-de-sac. And these guys got out of their car and with AK-47 shot up the car. She had 7 bullets and died. The others ended up in surgery, and they lived. One of them still has a bullet in his neck. They never caught the guys because they were illegals, and they were going back and forth over the border. And that was in, I'm not sure if it was like 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. I can't remember what year. It was, I think, a decade ago. Anyway, it still is an unsolved thing. But here was, so I called my friend. I said, wow, you were ahead of time because that just happened. I also had an experience of that with a friend of mine, and that freaked me out. We had the eclipses, and it was in 2010. It was in July, and me and my friend Judith were talking, and she was into astrology, but not an astrologer. She was always going to people. And she said to me, oh, the eclipse is coming up. I said, yeah, I know. It's in Cancer. How many degrees? She said 19 degrees. I said, oh, shit. I just got a motorcycle a few months before that. And my 8th house, which is death, sex, past lives, taxes, it has Uranus in it, the planet Uranus. And Uranus is the planet when something hits it, the unexpected happens. And I said, I better be careful riding my bike because it's the exact degrees as Uranus. I said, maybe somebody I know is going to die. I wonder who's going to die. Anyway, eclipse came. She and I were at dinner, and she looked so glowy. And I said to her, Judith, what'd you do? You look so fabulous. Something about your energy is different. She said, I had a reading with Jen, and she told me that all the old, out with the old, and all new beginnings were coming up. And so I said, okay, whatever, and I had stopped reading her because all I would see was white mist. And I said, you get more readings than I do, and I'm a psychic. You need to lay off. So anyway, I dropped her off at home. I gave her a hug. And 2 hours later, I was picking up on her, and I thought, well, I'm going to talk to her in the morning because that was our ritual. I'd text her, you up? And then I'd ride my bike over. It was a mile away so I could practice riding. She didn't answer. And I texted her. And anyway, bottom line was it turned out she died 2 hours after I dropped her off. That was the unexpected. And that one completely freaked me out because here I was sitting across from her and didn't pick up on it. I just knew something was different because I wasn't supposed to know because it was a Uranus there, which means the unexpected. And I called that psychic that gave her the reading. I said, I told her Judith died, and she said, wow, I saw endings and new beginnings, and I didn't realize that was death. So, you know, it just, again, to me, I've seen too many examples of how things are prescriptive.
What's your opinion with the view, if everything's prescripted, what are your thoughts on reincarnation?
Oh, I totally believe in reincarnation. I've had experiences with that too, reliving things. I've been a seer in just about every life, and it's usually ended badly. Because in the olden days, you got your head chopped off or whatever. But
flames, things like that. Yeah.
But you know, I totally believe in reincarnation. Because your soul is eternal, so you can come back whenever you want to. Now, one of the questions I did have for an astrologer, and if you have somebody in the audience that studied this part, that's into astrology, I had a friend that was in astrology, and I said, does your chart, when you come in a new life, are you coming in your progressed chart of your actual chart that you had, or is it a brand new chart that you picked? You know, so I always wondered that. I did a little experiment with her. I had a client in New York whose husband died, and when I was tuning in her sisters, I was picking up how the deceased husband was worried about his wife. And so I got his birth date, and I gave it to a friend of mine who was an astrologer, and I said, Heather, here's this guy's birthday. What do you get? And she said, he's really worried about his wife. And I said, by the way, he's dead. You know, so here I picked up on how from the other side he was worried about his wife, but in astrology she could see that he would have planets sitting a certain way that he'd be concerned about his spouse. So it's so interesting how it still goes on from the other side. She explained to me, like when Elvis Presley or somebody dies and all of a sudden there's a surge in their album selling, it's because something, Jupiter is hitting their chart and causing, causing this surge again for them to be popular again. So it's really cool. One of the things I want to say about reincarnation too, other than just doing a past life regression, go to a museum and where you feel like this tug and yearning of your soul to, let's say there's a painting or something or a period of time, artwork, and you feel like you want to cry, you want to jump in the picture, you miss it, you long for it. Boy, that's a lifetime you've had, in that era.
Oh, I agree. I think when you have a deep interest in a certain time period or a faraway place that you don't have a rational connection to, I think that's a clue. One of my sisters, when she was real little, maybe 2 years old, she started talking in detail about life as a papoose on her mother's back, horseback, and riding horseback, and teepees and so forth. And so those things happen.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you see, there was a segment, I think, on the news years ago about a boy who was shot down. His airplane was shot down in another life at Pearl Harbor, and he knew the names of the people and all that, and they posted that story. See, all of that, I think, is it makes the story of the third dimension more interesting, but it's also to get people to wake up. The stuff that happens is part of our own spiritual growth, to get us to go in more spiritually, especially the doubting Thomases. And if a person doesn't believe in any of it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean it isn't real, whether you believe in it or not. You can not believe in gravity. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Exactly. Oh, I agree with you there. And sometimes I think it means that the person has to relive a life and work on the same issues again, but the process keeps going.
Well, and I think of it also as like an actor. Some actors prefer to play the same kind of role over and over again. They're really good at it. And then others will try something, will try a different theme or a different variation once in a while, but they usually go back to the kind of role they're more comfortable with. And I think it's the same with us. And usually there are soul groups. So I think a lot of us reincarnate with a lot of the same souls that we knew and play different roles. It really is, in a lot of ways, like a soap opera.
You mean I was with her before?
Yep.
I can't accept that. I just can't.
That's all right.
Nobody is that insane to keep coming back.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, just like I really believe if somebody's murdered and somebody is the murderer, I mean, that was predestined too. You know, that stuff shows up.
You killed me.
No, but you were pushed in that river.
I drowned. You killed me.
I wasn't there. We're discussing past life memory.
Yeah, people definitely have. You know, there is some of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, the truth is you're all going to be born different ways. Some people come in breech, some cesarean, some natural childbirth, some in a cab, you know, whatever. And when you die, there are different ways to die, too. It's not all the same. So it's interesting, though. Usually the people that die quickly are the kind that don't like drama and people fussing over them, so they just do it quick, you know? Like, let's get it over with. So it just...
I get that.
I can see that.
Seeing how some of that does go with the personality. And then there's some that may have a terminal disease, but they only live for, let's say, a few weeks, and that's to allow the people around them to get used to the idea, but they don't want a long-term thing. You know, listen, we all get challenges, and it's not about what happens, it's about what we do with it. Somebody who gets breast cancer will start support groups. I've done a lot of stuff with the group Parents of Murdered Children in the past, and I see that these people are so inspiring because they've had kids that have been murdered, and they support each other so that they can still have a quality life. They can help other people through the things they've gone through. So, you know, the other thing is, too, when people go, oh, you must have bad karma because you have all this bad stuff happening to you. I went through an 8-year period where it seemed like it was all crap. And I had to, you know, while it was all going on, I had to find ways to create value in my life instead of making it all about that stuff. Like when my brother died, I used it to inspire me to go to run the marathon, to challenge myself, to try new things. That's why I got a motorcycle a few years ago, was, you know, I'm going to try that. I always had opinions like, people who ride bikes are in gangs are tough. I'll never do that. And then one day I decided I wanted to do it. Just like tattoos. And one day I went, I think I'll get a tattoo. So I always say never, you know. And so when you have, I always think that the people that get the most crap, sometimes it's because they're going to do the most for other people. Sometimes, and if you don't go through it, how can you help other people through it? So some of us...
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So some get more stuff so that we know what the hell we're talking about and we can help more people through it. I noticed, like, there was a school that elementary school I was invited to do, and I was picking up on what people would be when they grew up, all these little kids. And I said to them, it occurred to me, like, all of them would go on to do big things. And I said, you know, you guys have really tough lives. A lot of them were in foster care. I said, but, you know, you're really special to God or to your higher power, and you're going to do big things. So you're getting the tools early on how to cope with the tough stuff that some people may get hit with later on in life and not know how to deal with it. So you're learning early on those things and how to let go and go with the flow.
I agree. I think going through something very hard early does help a lot with being able to accept and release. It really does.
Well, it's like a therapist that's never done anything. That all they've ever done is go to school and that's it. They never lived life. How can they ever relate to the people that they're giving therapy to? There's just there's no way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's why usually people in that field are trying to work through their own crap.
Exactly.
Onto it, because people will go, well, you know, how can how can they be a therapist if their own life isn't in order? Well, look at people that do hair. Their hair is not always looking great, you know, but they are great with doing hair.
So my hair looks pretty good.
Yours, I think, got caught in a tornado in Joplin.
That's been gone long before that.
So I think I need to address, like, the person about the, you know, are things pre-scripted. I think what's really important to let people know, it doesn't mean, you know, some people will go, well, then what's the use of living? Why should I even do anything? Listen, you create value out of your life, set goals, find ways to feel enlightened, loving life, inspired, but, you know, don't blame yourself or get down on yourself if the goals you set don't occur, you know, because, again, you can't control the outcome. And some things will happen that you go for, and some things won't. And that's okay.
And another thing is that when you set those goals, what you live through afterwards changes who you are, and that goal may not even fit you anymore. And that's often planned and supposed to go that way. Carrie, let everyone know how they can get a hold of you if they're interested in meetings, and also your website and your books.
Okay, my website is myname.com, so it's www.carrieshubert.com, spelled CarrieShubert. There's no C in my last name, so it's like the theater, not like the composer. And, and I have one book that's on Amazon called Living in the Third Dimensional Soap Opera, A Spiritual Guide to Sanity, that I self-published in 2002, and I recently put it on Amazon rather than just selling it out of classes. And I have a big book that is coming out next month called In the Wake of Lies, which is an autobiography. But it really is about all the stuff I went through, and hopefully some of the tools and what I had to use to go through my experiences will help somebody else to get through some tough times. So I had a lot of crazy stuff go on.
So where should people look for your new book?
That'll be, well, not only will it be on Facebook, but they can probably Google In the Wake of Lies, and it will direct them to my website. And as soon as I'm about to as soon as it's about to be published, I'll have it up on my website, so they'll see the information. Yeah.
Very awesome, Carrie. I really enjoyed this. Is there any sort of parting advice that you would have for any of the viewers who perhaps are wondering about some of these issues of their future or their life path?
There's something I really want to say that I think is so important, and that is exercise caution with who you go to. Because I hear so frequently people that end up investing a lot of money in a psychic because the psychic will give them accurate information, will build them up, that either the second time, third time, sometimes the first, fourth time they come back, they'll tell them there's a curse, you have attaching spirits, and pay me $500 and I'll burn a candle and get it off, or we'll get you a tabernacle. So some of them are out for money, and just because somebody can accurately pick up on things in the present, it doesn't necessarily mean they're accurate about the future. Beware of anyone who's trying to take a curse off you or do something. I work with a lot of the police as personal clients, and I've done some things on cases. And I did have a client that had almost that experience with somebody who approached her out of nowhere. You have a great energy here, I'll give you a free reading. And then she came in, and eventually it was a money setup. And first of all, no one should ever approach you for a reading. We have a busy life, and if we have a good client base, we don't need to solicit you or send out marketing letters. And two, when I talk to the police about that, I guess they can't. You can try to call the police and file a complaint of fraud. But I think they can't do anything because you're not buying something tangible. How do you know if a curse is off or not? So really beware. And also, the psychic too, even if the psychic has good intentions, we really have to stay as clear as possible and do as much as we can to be clear so that we're not putting our own crap into something. So just trust that not everything is going to be 100% accurate either. We're not gods. We'll get things. Believe me, I will never say I'm 100% right on. Sometimes I'm 100% with a client. Other times I've heard that I've been off on maybe the relationship area. It came later on or something. But no one is ever 100%. So take it with a grain of salt.
Carrie, thank you very much, and we'd love to have you back again sometime, especially after your new book's out, and see if we can plug it for you. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, you guys. Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And everyone stay tuned to Closer to Death with Selena Roan. She's got Jason Black from Tex Park Paranormal. Have a good night.
Night, everyone.
Sometimes, yeah. There have been times, though, I'll never forget, there was one reading, and I picked up on this woman's husband. I described this guy, and she said, yeah, that's my husband. And she didn't tell me that he was deceased. And I went on and on and on about their relationship and how they interact. And I didn't know he was not around because a lot of the time, the only difference is you don't have your body. It's like a costume in a soap opera. So I can't always tell. I will ask people, sometimes I'll feel like somebody might be dead because they may feel more distant in some ways. And I'll go, is this the person who's passed away? Or if I'm feeling like a lot of physical stuff, then I'll know, okay, wait a minute, something's not right here. This guy's either got severe health issues or they're no longer here. And I'll try to be gentle about it. Like, I'm getting all these health issues. Is this person still around? Are there questions about their health? So, I try to be responsible about how I read, too.
I agree with you. I know for me, with it is different between the living and the departed. And I often get the physical sensations of the departed, usually connected with how they die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends. I don't always. I think it depends on how attached they are to their death or the person that you're tuning in for, how much they need to know about it. Before I really had control of my ability, when I went to places where somebody had died, I would feel it. I would feel the so-called negative that was stronger, and then I learned that all the other things that I felt that were coincidences were actually also psychic ability. So I learned how to kind of get an on-off button on that stuff too.
Did you see something?
Yeah, I did see something walk through there. We used to have as a guest this evening, Carrie Shubert. If I don't have a hiccup, sorry.
You got it. Hi.
Hiccup and not.
Wow.
And Carrie is a clairvoyant medium and very interesting person, author, and does a lot of interesting things. Carrie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a good day here. Any day here in California is awesome.
I can imagine.
Are you close to the beach?
I'm only 25 minutes away, but this morning I had a client call for about an hour, and then I got in a 4.5 mile run, and have just been kind of killing time waiting for your show.
Awesome. It sounds like that does sound like a great show. Why don't you tell what? I'm getting a look, but I don't know why. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay. Well, background we don't have all year. So, as far as you mean my profession, I've been doing this forever. Professionally, since 1979, though, was when I started doing psychic fairs. And it was after doing and then a thing called the Silva method, Silva mind control in '79. And it actually made my control of my psychic ability just like blossom like crazy. And one of the things I did to make my ability grow was that I lived in an apartment in Los Angeles at that time, and I was like in the courtyard area. I would open up my apartment door, and I'd ask people to come in that I didn't know, and I'd say, give me a name of someone and take notes, and then I'd like you to contact them, see if everything I got is correct, and then call me. And that's how I practiced. And then when I felt ready, I started doing psychic fairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that was kind of my question for you, is how you got into this, but that was kind of a woo right into it. So that's kind of interesting, the Silva method, huh? How did that make how did it make it blossom, I guess, was my question.
Well, here's the thing. Let me just back up a second. Okay, I'm going to compare what I do with tennis. So everybody can learn how to play tennis. So it's a technique, but the more passionate you are about it, the more you like really want to get on the court and learn. And so the people that become pros, they feel like something's missing if they're not out playing tennis every day. Well, it was the same with my psychic ability. Early on, I was getting things, and I didn't know what to do with them. And it was kind of like how other people get it, where they get a flash of something, and they don't know what it means or how to retrieve more of a complete picture. I was one of those, so it drove me crazy. So I was on this quest. I was constantly trying to look for things and ways to get more of it or to understand what I was getting. And I felt like I was different than everybody. So what actually developed it more and more was going to a lot of these self-help groups, meditating, reading things. The more the chatter in my head quieted down, the more I was getting more information. And what happened in Silva isn't necessarily what happens with other people, but I think what Silva showed me was that somehow we're all connected and there is no separateness. And there's a segment on the last weekend where they had you go to your level of self-hypnosis, because the whole thing is about alpha-theta levels. So when you go to your alpha-theta level, what we did was sat across from a partner, and they read off. They gave us the name. We got to our level. They
I've been wanting to do some other things to try to. I mean, I do a lot of meditation and stuff like that, and get into that theta state. But I'm interested in what other people do and other classes on how they do it, and see if I can incorporate that in my own deal.
I love sharing it because I really love to see the light come on for people when they go, wow, I'm actually tuning it in. One of the things I do want to say, because there are probably people listening that are curious about psychic development, is that it usually feels like you're making it up. It shows up like it's in your own head. And I think because of TV and media, people expect to see an apparition in their house or some like profound thing. And yes, sometimes I do get things like that where I feel somebody touch me or tap on my shoulder or whatever, but that really isn't the norm, where this apparition appears in front of you all the time. Not every reading is profound, but it is, we are getting on somebody's frequency. And so, you know, people have this daily too, where they, and I know I'm diversing a little bit. Sometimes when you're around people or you go into a room and there's a certain energy, you will pick up on the vibe and your mood changes. And most people don't realize that is empathing. You know, it's like in the 60s when they say they have good vibes. The truth is we're all made up of atoms and molecules that vibrate at a frequency. And so what you do when you're picking up on stuff, you actually are on somebody's frequency. We're all like a radio receiver, and we have our own channel, and that's what I call channeling, when I'm zeroing in and focusing my awareness on somebody's channel or frequency.
Do you find it different when you are on frequency with someone living versus spirit on the other side?
They'd give us the name of somebody, and what happened was all of a sudden it was like my third eye opened, and I could see an X-ray of a skeleton, and it would go beep, 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 and it would stop, let's say, on their knee where they had knee surgery. And the person, I'd say knee surgery, and they'd go hit, you know, if I got it. So that's how it went during that period of silver. But in my head, I went, okay, I don't want to see a skeleton. Show me how the person looks. And then I got this like lava lump of freckles. So then I said, do they have freckles? So it was coming in like the weirdest way. And then the more I worked with it, the more it actually developed where I see pictures, I feel the people that I'm tuning into. I'm an empath also, which means for me, the way I read, it's like I go to an alpha theta level, my level of self-hypnosis, and then I put the person's head on, basically, like a virtual reality trip, and I'm looking through their eyes, and certain things will stand out, certain things won't. Since I'm part of their script, I'm only going to see what they're allowed to know. So if you ask me a question, I am very long-winded.
No, that's fine. Talk away. I'm interested. I have a very similar situation with myself and the paranormal in how I've developed my own quote-unquote clairvoyant intuitiveness. And I focus a lot. You pretty much get what they want you to get. But, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, one of the things I want to say, too, because they really didn't have psychic school when I was growing up, I developed in '79 a course called Develop and Control Your Psychic Ability, and I've been teaching it for years, and for the last 18 years I've taught it in Arizona at the community colleges every trimester.
Wow. I actually saw that on your website. I would like to talk to you offline about that.